Hi, my name's Gavin. My website's hickorygolf.co.uk. Today I'm going to show you how to replace a grip on a hickory shafted club, and I'm going to attempt to do this real time so you'll see exactly how long it takes. Okay, so the first thing we have to think about is the grip actually worth saving? And if you've decided that it's not, then clearly it's got to come off. But what you might also decide to do is actually to build your grip on top of it, depending on whether you like a nice fat grip or what sort of diameter the club is. Now, from my experience, roughly speaking, I like to put on grips where there's the diameter here at the top is about 20 millimeters, 21 millimeters, and here about 18, 19. Now, for just today's purposes, I'm going to take this grip off. So I grab a knife, and it's a bit like playing real golf. What do they say? Grip, alignment, stance, posture. When it comes to actually gripping a club, how you grip it is makes it particularly either easy or difficult. And when people who haven't done this regularly try to do it, they often hold the club round the wrong way. So if you're right-handed, put that under your left arm there, and that then acts almost to hold it with your two hands are free. Similarly, if you were left-handed, you could do it the opposite way. And whilst I'm cutting this grip off, I'll just tell you a little story that a few years ago I did a hickory golf event down at Ferndown in Dorset in the UK. It was 2013, it was their centenary year, and there used to be a pro down there called Doug Sewell, and he showed me some old grips, some old clubs that he had, and at one time we were interrupted by a chap who came along, and he said that he'd brought in his grandfather's hickory clubs, and would I take a look at them, and did he think they were good enough for him to play with? And I said, well, a few were good enough for him to play the game with on that day, but I said to him, I said, interestingly, I said, your grandfather, did he put these grips on himself? And he said yes. And I said, well, did you know that he was left-handed? And he said, no, but it figured out that he played golf right-handed, but cricket left-handed and things like this. Anyway, basically, by just how he wrapped on the grip, I could tell whether he was left-handed or right-handed. So, got this grip off, and there's normally a little tack at the bottom, and usually there's more than one, and similarly at the top here. Okay, so you can either pull them out with pincers, but actually sometimes the easiest thing is just to actually, particularly the ones at the top, is to knock them down so that they're flush with the wood. The ones at the bottom, usually the grip, like on this one, the old grip has stuck around it, so you've got to get rid of that to just make it flush. You can go over the top of it, but it's just makes it a neater job. Okay, so when you're re-gripping a club like this, what you should be looking for is if there's any signs of woodworm in the shaft along here. Now, a lot of shafts you'll see a sort of black, and here you can see it. This is black pine tar that both acted to stick on the grip and also to dissuade woodworm. And I'll do another video on woodworm sometime. So there's no woodworm, and what I do is just take an old craft knife and just run it down there and try and take off any lumps or bumps, and just to make it a relatively smooth surface. Okay, next thing. Now, over the years I've come to use large quantities of double-sided sticky tape. It didn't exist as far as I know 100 years ago, or I'm sure pros then would have used it as they use modern grip tape today. But what you're doing is you wind on double-sided sticky tape all the way down in a spiral. If you can get it so that the edges, it's very edge to edge, that's usually good. It's not absolutely critical. You don't want massive gaps though, obviously. Right, so there we are. It's wound down, and usually then if you peel off the little bit at the bottom, put another bit round. And as you can see, I'm just holding it, the club, under my left arm at times, and I just sort of do it without thinking now. I've done several thousand of these probably over the last 20 years. Okay, so now I hold the club like this, and hopefully, oh, and he says typically, depending on the quality of the double-sided sticky tape, pull that off. Yeah, there we are, right. Okay, so I unwind that. It's torn again. Don't usually have trouble with this stuff. Famous last words. You can use a spray-on glue or a sort of, brush-on glue, but I just find double-sided sticky tape works really well. Okay, so the next thing is you've selected hopefully what sort of grip, and a lot of people like a suede-y, leathery grip. I just buy sides of leather and I cut it with a sharp knife into long strips. Now, one thing you'll see, or you may read about, is people saying, well, they taper it from one end to the other and it's got to be absolutely straight. I don't do that. I found that really it doesn't matter. It may make for a absolute perfectly parallel looking grip, but I'll show you why that doesn't matter. So you've got one end, and typically if it is the thicker end, if it is slightly tapered, pick the thicker end. A good pair of sharp scissors, and then with the surface that's going to be on the outside, you cut it like this, roughly diagonal, leaving perhaps just over 1/4 of an inch, 5 or 6 millimeters at the end. So it looks like that. Okay. Then, now what I'm not, or shall I? Okay. Right. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I take that, again holding the club under my left arm, and place that onto the shaft. Like that. Gently pull, just gently, not so that it pulls off, but not so it's slack, and then all the way round once. Now, what I was going to say, and I will say, is this bit here is where I started the chamfer, and if you wish, under there you could put a tack in the through the grip into the wood to make it absolutely secure. Now again, you may read or hear that you've got to have a tack in there. I can tell you that I've got some clubs here that I've re-gripped 20 years ago, and they've been played with by hundreds of people over those 20 years, and they haven't come undone. A lot of it depends on having a significant amount of width there so that it stays captive under the grip. Some people I do re-grips for, I say, do you want it tacked in the end? And if they do, that's absolutely no problem. But what needs to happen is when you take a little awl to make the pilot hole into the wood, through the grip and into the wood, you have to align it so that you're going down in line with the grain. Otherwise, if you try to do it cross grain, or it doesn't go in as nicely, and it risks splitting the end. But actually, it's sort of counterintuitive. If you do it in line with the grip, and you'll see the lines, it'll slide in between the layers of wood. Okay, so that's my first turn, if you like. I go down, I'm still actually overlapping until about nearly an inch, 3/4 of an inch, say, down. And then what I do with my right hand is I hold the leather so that I'm sort of arching. I'm putting pressure here and a little bit of pressure here. So I'm arching the grip as I put it on to the edge. And why that is to make that good edge-to-edge contact. Okay, so I'm winding it down. If you get a little bit of overlap, that's not too bad. You can rectify that in a second. But you should aim for it to be sort of fitting up close on as you're winding. Again, you have to hold the leather correctly. Your grip has to be correct so that it has that little, and I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but there's little bumps here almost in the middle of each spiral where it's not quite in contact with the wood yet. Okay, so I'll wind that all the way down. Now, generally, in terms of the length of the piece of leather to cut, I'd say about 32 inches. We'll nearly do all grips. Okay, so I've got a bit left over there. Now, this takes a little bit of care because, again, I've turned the club round now so that this is under my armpit, the butt end of the grip. And I'm taking a sharp knife and I'm placing it to chop off the end of the grip at exactly where I want. Now I start it on the piece that's still not attached and go away from me, so I'm cutting in the direction that it's being wound on. If you try and cut against the direction it's being wound on, that's when you get into all manner of bother and it starts coming slack. So again, it's alignment here and grip that's important. Okay, so that there has now been chopped off all the way round, and because it's right at the edge of where the double-sided sticky tape was, it's retained itself, it's not flopping around. The next thing I'm going to do, and I start just near to but not quite at the point, is I take the sharp knife and I carve away from me downwards at a 45-degree angle in a sort of little sawing motion. Now my knife, this isn't my favourite knife, I have to say. In a little sawing motion and pushing, just pushing with my left thumb there, so that I'm carving down and cutting off the edge of the leather to chamfer it down onto the grip, down onto the shaft. Okay, and that'll become clear why I'm doing that in a second. So I go all the way round, again cutting away from me. 1, safety. 2, makes the job easier. All the way round until I've got something that looks like that. So this bit here, now I'm going to put the knife there and I'm going to run it all the way round, and that's going to get rid of that edge. You don't have to press very hard. You certainly don't want to go into and below too much. It doesn't matter if you go through the layer of varnish there. You see old clubs when you take the grips off, and you see them, they'll have these little dinky cut marks, 20 little cut marks, and that's exactly why they have that. That's just what I've been doing. So now that end is chamfered. What I do then is I take some more double-sided sticky tape and putting it over the edge so that it reaches down onto the shaft enough. Put one loop round, press it down, and then take that off, obviously to reveal the sticky tape. Now I swap the club round again, and I've got the head end under my arm, and I've got a big long reel here of black waxed twine. Just pick that up, and this is the good stuff. And what you want is the stuff that feels very waxy, but then when you put some pressure on it, it squishes flat and squishes all together, and I'll show you why in a second. Okay, so the next thing is that pointing away from me, I put onto the piece of sticky tape, and then winding away from me, and again I'm winding in the direction that the grip has been put on, again to keep it all nice and tight as you're doing it. I wind it round once, not applying hardly any tension to it, and then by the time you've gone round and over, you've looped over it at least twice, then normally you can pull that tight without it slipping. Okay, so then I'm just winding for as many times as I like, and it will wind up the little bit of wood, up the chamfered edge of the leather. And again, it's important that you wind up and not down. That's another mistake that people make. They start up and they wind down, where really you want to start down and wind up, because it makes it the twine hold together much easier. Okay, when you've got about 6 to 8 inches of twine left, that's going to give you about 3, 4, 5, probably 5 turns. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off at about 8 inches left. I'm also going to cut a small length off the end of the spool of about 5 inches. Now that's my thread puller. So I'm going to bend that in half so it's a V shape, and I'm going to put that under or over the existing wound on threads, pointing upwards, but under, and then with my loose end that's going to go over it. Now again, you must think and get this the right way round, that the loop is upwards, because what you're going to do is pull it downwards. Easy mistake to make if you put the thread puller in the wrong way when you first start doing this. So that's given me 4 turns round, and I've got about just nearly an inch left. That then, the end gets put through the loop. I'm pressing here to keep it tight, and I'm pulling there to pull that loop down and through, and pull that down and out. So that little piece, I can just pop it on the workbench, and maybe I'll use it for the next one, maybe I won't. Then you've got the tail sticking off, and you're just going to cut that with a pair of scissors. Again, you need a nice sharp pair, and it helps if you just hold it so that it's quite tight. You pull it off, and then, as I was saying about this type of twine, you need the stuff that smooths together. Now what I do is I actually use my nail. I'm pressing down as I'm turning the shaft round. Again, I'm twisting in that direction, so anti-clockwise, and I'm just using my nail. But some people you could use a end of a flat-bladed screwdriver. You could use, in fact, if I'm doing, say, a scare neck club where I've got a large amount of whipping, what I often do is take an old head of an iron that's smooth, got a smooth hosel, and I'll use that and rub it like this up and down to smooth it all together. Okay, right, now one step that I alluded to earlier was, if you've got a piece that's in this section of the grip where you've got the edge and it's actually not gone edge to edge and it's sort of sticking up, as it were, I take my other thumb nail, I put it into that, and I'm pressing just quite firmly and twisting the club so that as I go down it will tuck away any lumps and bumps that may have occurred on the edge to edge. And I'm gripping quite firmly here with my finger and I'm pushing with my thumb, and by doing that what I'm doing is I'm pushing the leather wrap down onto the sticky tape, down onto the shaft, and I'm just following the spiral all the way down. And that's it. Now, as a final thing, and a lot of this depends actually on your quality of your leather, sometimes again, get something nice and smooth and ideally round and just run it up and down to smooth it all together. And what you'll find with this type of grip as well is actually they bed in as you play with the grip. The edges will meld together even more so that you've got a nice even grip. And that's it. Now you can, if you wish, take another piece of twine. Now I don't do this with every club, but typically on clubs that I sell I do, because people almost like to see it. I put whipping up at the top end, and again, so I'm pushing the end away from me, hold that with my finger, keep holding it with my finger as I turn the club round at least once and trap the end. Okay, now it doesn't matter if it's a bit slack on the end there, because you're going to pull that. You do another turn, you grasp the little tail, pull it just so that there's no slack sticking at the bottom of the wrap, and then so that's 2, 3, 4. Now it's a bit personal preference almost. Some people like lots of twine in this area, some people just want it quite slim, if you like, not many wraps. So that's 4 times round. Take my little piece of thread that I used before as my thread puller. Oops. And there, I've put my thread puller in again, away from the region where I've got the tail sticking out. I'll give it another at least 2, ideally perhaps 4 turns round. So I've got about 8 or 9 wraps in total. Again, I'm holding, you see I can take this hand away and I'm pulling with this hand because I've got the club trapped under my armpit. It's not going anywhere. So I can then press that there to keep it tight while I reach for my scissors. Or, yes. Chop off the end. Put the end through the loop. Pull it so it's nice. It needs another couple one, and then pull that right through. Again, I can put that little thread puller piece down, and now I can take away that finger and nothing's going to happen. I can cut that. I've got a little bit of just tiny bit there sticking up in the middle, and that's the original piece. Now if you want to be absolutely fastidious about it, take a nice sharp knife and you can either just cut that little bit off, or indeed if you just with your thumb smooth it back so that it just looks a bit neater. And again, I take my fingernail and push, and it's melding it all together. and that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I've demonstrated that you don't need any particular sort of jig to do regripping on hickory clubs. And if you've got any questions, please drop me an email at info@timewarpgolf.com or visit my website, which is hickorygolf.co.uk. Thanks for watching.